Hi, I'm Eric Bolling in for Bill O'Reilly. Thanks for watching us tonight. Let's get straight to our top story. Donald Trump's team begins to take shape. President-elect Trump today announced his choices for 3 key posts in his incoming administration. Lieutenant General Michael Flynn for National Security Advisor, Congressman Mike Pompeo, a Republican from Kansas, for the director of the CIA. But the big announcement today is Trump's pick of Alabama Senator Jeff Sessions for Attorney General, a choice that has conservatives cheering and liberals in distress. The choice is generating so much controversy that the factor himself, Bill O'Reilly, is interrupting his day off to weigh in on the matter. Bill joins us now by phone. So, Bill, you want to first concentrate on Sessions as the AG nominee. What do you think of that? Why is it causing so much controversy?
Well, if you know the Alabama senator, you know he is one of the most anti-illegal alien chaos politicians in the country. So this is a statement, first of all, by Donald Trump that says we're going to go after alien criminals. All right, so because this guy, Sessions, former Justice Department official, is going to do that. Now, for the Trump supporters, that they're going to cheer, as you said, but there's going to be an unintended consequence because the open border people and the pro-migrant people who don't want any scrutiny on the situation are going to go wild because Senator Sessions has a history of being very, very tough on this issue. So it is going to be some controversy. But here's the irony of it all. He'll get confirmed. Sessions will get confirmed, and so will Pompeo, and so will the general, because in 2013, Harry Reid and the Democrats put forth the so-called nuclear option, where it's just a straight up or down vote in the House and Senate. And so the Democrats can't stop it. So they thought that they were being clever in 2013, removing all the barriers to Barack Obama's appointments. Well, now Trump has turned the tables on them, so it's going to be Attorney General Sessions.
Hey, Bill, the lefties all over the place today are complaining about some of the comments that Sessions had made, a couple of jokes he had made, some of the things he had said 30 years ago. Should this weigh in on his confirmation?
Well, they're going to demonize Sessions because, again, it's a battle between open border, pro-migrant amnesty folks on one side and the people who want immigration law enforced on the other. And Sessions is, of course, the people who want immigration law enforced guy. So this is going to be a huge deal, and they'll try to demonize Sessions. They'll dig up all the dirt on him. They'll throw it on out there, but it really ultimately will not matter.
Okay. One of the other big news items this week, late this week, Mitt Romney will come and meet Donald Trump over in Bedminster, New Jersey. The sit-down has caused quite a stir in the non-establishment wing of the Republican Party. Your thoughts on the meeting?
Well, it's a surprise, and it's a smart move by President-elect Trump, because he sends a message that he's not a vindictive man, because he and Romney obviously had some problems during the campaign. So he sends that message, I'm not vindictive. Romney could do the job of being Secretary of State. He's very smooth, and he knows the world leaders. He could do the job, and it basically consolidates the moderate wing of the Republican Party, because that's Romney, with the Trump administration. So to me, it's a pretty brilliant move, and I don't think Romney would be coming into New Jersey if this wasn't a serious situation.
You think it's this, but you know, the Secretary of State job, big job. In fact, one of Trump's most loyal supporters, Rudy Giuliani, has said that's the job I want. You think that's the right one for him, or do you think that might cause a little bit of chaos on the right?
Well, I can't speak to Mayor Giuliani and his status within the Trump administration because I don't know anything about it. But I can tell you this, that Romney is a pretty good deal maker. I mean, he's a Republican governor in Massachusetts, and he got along with that very liberal state assembly up there and got a lot done. So in the Secretary of State position, you need someone who can convince other nations to do what the USA wants. Romney's good at that, and he's got stature overseas. It is interesting that Giuliani doesn't seem to be in the running for Secretary of State or Attorney General. So I wonder where maybe he'll be the Homeland Security czar. I'm not sure where that stands. But I think the Romney play, as I said, is a smart move.
All right, Bill, we have a little bit of news that alleged news or a leak that David Petraeus may be looked at for a job as well. That's not confirmed, but the Trump transition team called today National Security Day. AG Sessions, we talked about, National Security Advisor Lieutenant General Mike Flynn, and CIA Director Mike Pompeo. Grade the Trump transition team's picking, or Trump's picking, on their National Security Day.
I don't know Congressman Pompeo, so I can't grade it. All right. I know the general a little bit. He's a tough guy. National Security Advisor. I mean, why not? What's the downside? I don't see it. On the Petraeus rumor, and that's all it is, as you accurately reported, I think Petraeus would be pretty good Secretary of Defense. I mean, I know he got in trouble, back there with giving classified information to the girlfriend, but David Petraeus is a brilliant military mind, brilliant. I mean, he saved the bacon in Iraq. He did a great job in Afghanistan. I don't know anybody more qualified to run defense than Petraeus. So if that's true, if that rumor is true, that's another really smart move.
So on the surface, we are safer day one of the Trump administration, or less safe day one of the Trump administration that we are right now?
It's all speculation. You know I don't do that bowling. You can't ever project out on what might or coulda, shoulda happen. I'll tell you this. I think that the message was sent by Sessions that Trump isn't going to fool around with this illegal immigration deal. That's the message. Yep. If Romney is a serious player and Secretary of State, that's a positive. It also sends a message that Trump's not vindictive. He's looking to do the best for the country. And if Petraeus is in play, I think that's a brilliant move. Yeah. So I would say it's a good day for the Trump administration today.
Very good, very good. Good day for the Trump administration. By the way, Sessions also had some of the ideas that you liked about immigration, illegal immigrants deporting, and felonies. When they come back and commit felonies, they got to go away for a long time.
All right, Bill, that's Kate's law, and we assume that will pass quickly when Mr. Trump takes office.
All right, very good, Bill. Thank you for spending time with us tonight.
Eric, thanks for filling in for me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, thank you. Straight ahead, Mike Huckabee had a big meeting with Donald Trump today. Will the governor be joining the Trump administration? Governor Mike Huckabee will be here in a moment. In the personal story segment tonight, former Arkansas governor and Republican presidential candidate Mike Huckabee had a meeting with President-elect Donald Trump today. Mr. Huckabee joins us now. So, Governor, I'm going to have a little fun with you.
Go ahead. Have a little fun. Everybody does.
Congratulations.
Were
you offered a job today?
We talked about an opportunity, but, I'm not sure it was the right fit. So, here's the thing. I want Donald Trump to be successful.
Can I just stop you here? Because a lot of people have speculated on what job Mike Huckabee might be offered, and ambassador to Israel was one of the things floated.
That was not something that was even discussed, and it's been all over the news that it not only was discussed, but that it was a done deal. Yeah. Where the press comes up with this stuff, they only know, but it was totally manufactured.
So
not true.
I was there when you came down, and I saw you. There was a gaggle. There's behind the rope. There's a bunch of press people, and people talked to the press people. Did they just speculate that Israel might be?
It had already been blowing up all day long, and my iPhone, I'm going to have to get a new one. This one burned up like a Galaxy 7 Samsung. It was so hot because everybody in the world, congratulations. I'm thinking, guys, it hadn't happened. That has not happened. It wasn't even discussed. But I would never get into the details of what we talked about, what he offered. Here's why. Because
can we do this?
Yeah.
Was it a cabinet position? Was it an advisory position?
Yes.
Both.
Primarily cabinet, but as to which agency, the reason that I wouldn't discuss it is because somebody's going to get that slot, and I don't want them to think that they're number 2. Heck, I may have been number 4 for all I know. But here's the point. I've said this many times. People who know don't talk.
It's not energy. It's probably not Treasury.
Know.
Agriculture?
No, I'm not going to talk about it. I'm not going to talk about it.
Do I see a little sweat forming on your brow? Is that
not even a little bit? Right. It takes a lot more than that to make you sweat.
Let's do this.
Okay.
When the president-elect entertains people coming in, you sit down. What happens? You walk into the office, and is it just him? Is Reince Priebus there? Or is Bannon there? Steve Bannon there?
I'm assuming that there's all different kinds of meetings. I mean, typically he's going to have some senior staff with him. Beyond that, I think anything else, I would want only his team to disclose. And here's why. When you have a meeting of that level with somebody, the number one thing you need to bring, other than your loyalty to the president-elect and ultimately to the president, is your ability to keep your mouth shut. Because if you can't be trusted in that setting, you can't be trusted. And so I know people.
Well, do they care? Do they care if you say, "Hey, I'm being looked at from Secretary of Agriculture"?
If they want to talk about it, they can talk about it. It's their job. It isn't mine. They have the right to talk about it. They have the right to offer it. They have the right to not offer it. I don't feel like that I have the right to go out and discuss it. And it's just a principle with me, because I've been in the position as a governor when you talk to people about jobs and they go out and leak all over the place. And sometimes what they say is either not true, not full, not complete. And look, here's what I will tell you. I think Donald Trump is going to be a fantastic president. He is a decisive executive. He surrounds himself with people who make decisions, and he delegates, which is the mark of a great executive. He also is moving much more quickly than the press give him any credit for. Yeah. I mean, that's a machine over there. They're moving this thing along. But to his credit, he's not just filling slots. He's looking for people who fit not a slot, but who fit a team for a specific mission. That's smart executive planning.
So he's not, he's actually breaking the mold of how you would pick a cabinet and a team and administration going forward as well.
Well, in many ways, because he's approaching it much more like a business executive would approach it, rather than just a politician handing out lollipops to his buddies.
Let's do it this way. What would you like?
What would I like? I'd like America to be great again, Eric.
Me too.
Look, I'm not in it. I've never been in it for a job.
January 21st, where would Mike Huckabee like his office to be?
I'd like to be out there just cheering him on as president. And, you know, I know everybody thinks that I went out and supported him because I wanted the job. I'm happy with what I'm doing. I'm happy in the private sector. And I made it very clear to him, I'm not angling or elbowing for some federal job. My life will be just fine if I don't get a federal paycheck. Probably be a heck of a lot better, to be honest with you. Let me tell you what. All of us as Americans need to get behind this man. He has the ability and capacity to do big things and bold things. We're at a point in our country, that's what we need.
And contrary to all the media reports, I can tell you very, very pointedly, the transition team is not in disarray.
No.
Here's what I want you, we only have about a minute or so.
Okay.
Mitt Romney coming to Bedminster this weekend. Your thoughts?
Well, I think it's nice of Mitt to come and show up. I hope he comes hat in hand. I hope he makes an apology for the things he said about Donald Trump. He was wrong. He was hurtful. He hurt the party. He hurt Donald Trump. Donald Trump still won. He owes Donald Trump an apology, and he owes him his support. Too little late for anything in the election, but that's what I hope happens. It's a big, big thing of Donald Trump that he's willing to meet with Romney and have that sit down with him.
Does he owe Mike Huckabee an apology? Does he owe Sarah Huckabee an apology?
No, he didn't do anything to me, didn't do anything to my daughter, but he did something to Donald Trump, who was the elected nominee of our party. And I think that all of us who helped Mitt Romney when he was our elected nominee and he had gotten the most votes, we got behind him because that's what parties do. And that's what he should have done. He didn't, but he can make some amends for it by what he does this weekend. Let's hope he does.
Governor Huckabee, thank you very much.
Good to see you, Eric.
All right, next on the rundown, will Rand Paul try to block any of Donald Trump's cabinet nominees? The senator joins us when The Factor comes right back. In the Impact segment tonight, the Senate and the Trump administration. Most cabinet positions require Senate confirmation, but some of Donald Trump's cabinet choices are already facing opposition, and not just from Democrats. Senator Rand Paul, a Republican from Kentucky, has said he too might block certain nominees. The senator joins us now from Washington. Welcome, Senator. So you've said that if John Bolton were named the attempted to be appointed Secretary of State, you would block that, you would filibuster that. And Rudy Giuliani. You tell us why?
Well, you know, I supported Donald Trump, and one of the things I like about Donald Trump was that he said, you know what, we should learn something from the Iraq War. It was a mistake, and regime change is a mistake. It hasn't made us safer. It's emboldened Iran. When we toppled Gaddafi in Libya, didn't make us safer. ISIS grew in Libya. So I think that one of Donald Trump's big messages was Iraq War was a mistake, and regime change hasn't worked in the Middle East. So I don't think he should appoint somebody. I'm just trying to be helpful, Eric. I don't think he should appoint somebody who actually didn't learn any of those lessons. I mean, Bolton is an extremist. He is somebody who believes, and he was asked this within the last few months, was the Iraq War a good thing? He would do it all over again. but he's also for regime change in Iran, and he believes that we can make the world safe for democracy by toppling governments around the world. And that is not something, that's someone who hasn't learned the lessons of the Middle East. So yeah, I supported Donald Trump. I'm not out here to oppose his picks. I'm hopefully out there to guide and bring the debate to the points where people might agree or disagree, you know, whether or not the Secretary of State should agree with Donald Trump that regime change is a bad idea.
So let's talk about Mitt Romney. His name has been floated as well. He's meeting with Donald Trump tomorrow. Your thoughts on Mitt Romney? I don't think he brings anything any better for what you're looking for as far as Secretary of State.
What I would say is that I would ask the same questions. Do you think the Iraq War was a mistake? Have we learned a lesson that regime change is not a good thing? So, for example, one of Donald Trump's first picks today, Mike Flynn, to be National Security Advisor, he has said that the historical lesson we should learn is that it was a strategic failure going into Iraq. I'm comforted by that. I feel hopeful that Mike Flynn will be giving him the advice that a lot of us have come to understand about the Middle East. Romney, I'm not sure. I don't think he's way out there on the extreme edge of the, you know, the war-making cliff like Bolton or even Giuliani. But, you know, I would want to ask those same questions to Romney as well. Have we learned the lesson that the Iraq War was a mistake?
Well, can we float a name? Who would fit the bill for you as for Secretary of State?
Well, you know, one of the other names that's been floated in the mix has been Senator Corker from Tennessee. He's head of the Foreign Relations Committee, has some significant experience with meeting and knowing some of our foreign leaders. And I think he'd be a more reasonable, rational hand and not really so much a bomb thrower. So you want the head of your State Department not to be the head of the armed forces. This is a person who's head of diplomacy. You want them to be a diplomat. Their job is to try to see how we avoid war, not to create war. Now, you want your Defense Department to be prepared for war. So there are different sort of objectives that you have, but I don't want the Secretary of State to be somebody saying, oh, we need to bomb Iran. We need to bomb Iran yesterday or the day before or the day after. You want the chief diplomat to be saying, these are the things I think we can do to oppose Iran and to let them know we're not going to be a pushover and to stop them from doing what they're doing, but it doesn't involve necessarily invading Iran.
What about, would you want them to actually renegotiate the Iran nuclear deal, whoever that Secretary of State may be, would that be a requirement? Or are you okay with the Iran nuclear deal staying in place?
I think most people misinterpret the Iran agreement. I was against the agreement because I didn't think it did enough, but it did do some things. It gave a bunch of money to Iran early on, which I disagreed with. That money's already been given. And now Iran is expected to comply with nuclear sanctions, not conventional weapon sanctions, but nuclear sanctions. So far, there hasn't been evidence presented that they have not adhered to the nuclear sanctions. What everybody's complaining about, I still complain about as well, is that they keep sending arms to other proxy groups fighting in wars around the Middle East, and that they keep developing conventional weapons. But that wasn't part of the agreement. So really what you need is a new agreement. Now, whether or not they are a negotiating partner that we can rely on, that's the real question.
Okay. I want to pivot a little bit to some news that affects your state, Kentucky. Ford today has announced that they are not going to move a plant that they had planned to move to Mexico. They're going to keep it, and they called Donald Trump today and said, hey, guess what? Because of you, we're going to keep this plant in Kentucky. That's good news for your state.
Absolutely, and I think there are things that could be done with a bully pulpit, and I think we can expect Donald Trump will use the bully pulpit, and I'm hoping that in the future we'll be able to say to people that, you know what, just like in our defense, we will negotiate from a position of strength. In our trade, we should negotiate from a position of strength. I don't know who gets all the credit, but I'm more than willing to give Donald Trump some of the credit for keeping Ford in Louisville.
And maybe others as well, Senator, especially if people take their cue from Ford. Companies take their cue from Ford, or some of these trade deals, NAFTA and some of the other trade deals that are so restrictive and drive manufacturing jobs out of the country. If those are broken, maybe we can keep some of these companies.
Yeah, and the other thing we need to do if we want to keep American companies here is one thing we can do to make it better for them, to allow them to compete and so they don't flee our country, reduce the tax burden. We have the highest corporate income tax in the world. We should, at the very beginning of Trump administration, lower the corporate income tax as fast as possible to keep those American companies here.
Yeah, I would guess that was going to be one of his first initiatives, would be 35 to 15% corporate tax, and then allow the repatriation of funds to come back.
Absolutely.
Senator Paul, thank you for joining us. us tonight.
Thanks, Eric.
Plenty more ahead as the Factor moves along this evening. Who else is Trump considering for his key roles in his administration? We'll get the lowdown from none other than Ed Henry. Plus, far-left mayors in big cities continue to say they'll defy the Trump administration on immigration. Is that wise? Stick around for those reports. In the Factor follow-up segment tonight, Donald Trump still has several key posts to fill to that end. He'll be meeting with several people over the weekend, including a face-to-face tomorrow with one of his harshest critics, Mitt Romney. Joining us now with more, Mr. Ed Henry.
Good to see you, sir.
Yeah, earth-shattering. Mitt Romney?
Yeah,
this guy ran the Never Trump movement for a long time.
He called him a phony and a fraud in a speech in March. That's what he called Donald Trump. And Trump, you remember in the first Fox debate, said something like, this guy's a loser, he's a choker, he blew the 2012 election. So here's the bottom line. I think Donald Trump is making a sincere effort here, the president-elect, to reach out to some of his former foes, Romney, as well as Ted Cruz, who he met with this week as well. But look what happened with Cruz. Within a day of the meeting, it turns out, no, he's not going to be Attorney General. He may still be nominated to the Supreme Court. That's a possibility. But no, instead, Attorney General goes to Jeff Sessions. I think the same is going to happen from what I'm hearing with Mitt Romney. It's going to be a sincere effort, patch up the differences, but in the end, one transition official told me, this is kind of a head fake, it was described to me, to Mitt Romney. You know,
does Romney know this? Romney's flying from
He has to know that the president-elect is not going to say, the person I want to represent me in the United States around the world is somebody who called me a fraud. That's the bottom line. And so I think it's sincere about reaching out, but not sincere about being Secretary.
So while this is going on, Mayor Rudy Giuliani has said he wants the Secretary of State. He's indicated he wants the Secretary of State job. I noticed he hasn't been on TV for a few days.
I think he's trying to work out some things behind the scenes. I'm hearing from people inside the transition that it's become a little more complicated than they first expected. What I heard from a transition official was they're hearing from the president-elect he wants to, quote-unquote, save Rudy. What does that tell me? It tells me two things. One, that maybe they think the nomination process, if he were to be nominated to be Secretary of State or had it been Attorney General, would be more complicated. I'll get to that in a second. And secondly, though, save him means the president-elect wants to work it out. It's different than with Chris Christie, where it was under the bus, my friend. With Rudy Giuliani, there is basically nobody, as you know, closer to the president-elect than Rudy Giuliani. And so what I'm hearing is that save Rudy idea is, it's not that he's in deep trouble or something, it's that his business, international business dealings, since he's left as mayor, he's made a lot of money. He's entitled. It's a free country, but it gets complicated. The kind of money, the clients he's had, if he wanted to be Secretary of State, it brings up some of the same problems as the Clinton Foundation. No more complicated
than Clinton Foundation.
Well, but after both Rudy Giuliani and President-elect Trump spent a lot of time beating up on the Clinton Foundation, you don't want that to boomerang on you. So again, he could still be Secretary of State.
We're talking about a Senate confirmation that needs 51 senators. The Republicans have 51 senators,
very close.
And maybe 52, depending on Louisiana.
Yeah, and you would expect that there would be some Democrats that would support Rudy Giuliani because before this campaign, especially after 9/11, he was a very nonpartisan figure.
You go, listen, you didn't have a problem with the Clinton Foundation. Why do you have a problem with Rudy Giuliani?
You could certainly try, and that's why the key word was save. It wasn't under the bus. It was, we still want him. Also, quickly, I'm hearing from people in transition, in the end, it doesn't matter if Giuliani is secretary this or that. He will be right next to the president, and in some cases, he could end up being more influential as an informal advisor than being in the cabinet. You heard that from Mike Huckabee. We've heard that from Ben Carson. Just because you have secretary next to your name, we've seen in cabinets you get buried sometimes. It's better to just have influence and be a key advisor.
Good point, good point. Let's talk a little bit about the news that came out this afternoon. Trump University, there was a settlement in that lawsuit.
Well, look, on his face, it's a little bit of a flip-flop for the president-elect. Let's be blunt. Let's be truthful, which is that some months ago he said, I will never settle this case on principle. Well, things change, and I think it makes sense why he decided to settle it. What's changed is he's the president-elect, and he's getting all this heat that the transition is slow. I think that's been debunked, because in fact today he showed a flurry of activity, not just random activity, but key posts, national security.
Get this off my desk. This thing is just making too much noise over here.
So he doesn't admit any wrongdoing. He gets it. It's a nuisance suit to him. Move on.
Do you have any surprise picks? You hearing anything?
I mean,
off, not holding anyone. Fox isn't calling anything, but
no.
hearing any
I think
names?
another meeting that's interesting tomorrow is Michelle Rhee. She's an Asian American woman. She had run the schools in Washington, D.C., which have been in deplorable condition for a long time. She improved it, and she took on the teachers' unions. Why is that important? Well, I think she's somebody who could actually shake up the education department, number one. And number two, what you're hearing is it's early, but the early picks have been all white men.
I think they should pick someone for the education secretary that will close the agency
Turn
down.
the lights out.
Yep, close. That's it. We're done.
She's somebody, Michelle Rhee, who would shake it.
Very good, Ed. Thank you very much. When we come right back, there's been fierce reaction from the left over Donald Trump's picks for national key security positions. One of those critics will be here next. You won't want to miss this. Thanks for staying with us tonight. I'm Eric Bolling in for Bill O'Reilly in the Unresolved Problems segment tonight. And boy, is this aptly named. The left and the Trump administration. Liberals are slamming some of Trump's early choices for advisors in cabinet positions, especially immigration hardliner Jeff Sessions for Attorney General. Joining us now from Los Angeles, Leo Terrell, a civil rights attorney. Welcome, Mr. Terrell. So...
Thank you very much.
Let me guess. You don't like the fact that Jeff Sessions has been tough on immigration for the entirety of his career.
No, let me tell you the truth. First of all, the drain the swamps argument by Trump is over because Sessions is an insider. But here's the problem. Here's a man who's been not appointed as the Attorney General, if confirmed by the Senate, who was rejected as a federal judge for making racial comments. He was rejected in the 80s after being a Reagan nominee for the federal court.
30 years ago, sir. But 30 years ago, this happened.
Those words matter when it comes to calling an African American the N-word, saying that the Klan was an okay organization. More importantly, this is the same man who said that it's okay for the Muslim ban. And Eric, he was against
there are a lot of people who are in favor of some sort of registry or at least some sort of extreme or enhanced vetting for Muslims coming into the country, especially from terror sponsors, states sponsored to terrorists.
Eric, a ban on a religious group on Muslims is against our constitutional.
I didn't say religious. I said from a location.
That's what Sessions was. But let me also mention the other thing. His position on immigration is outrageous. He did not even support the bipartisan bill, the Gang of Eight. And I'm telling you right now, if you are a dreamer, if you are a Hispanic, if you're an undocumented alien, you better hide because Jeff Sessions will not accept any compromise. He's a threat to undocumented workers, dreamers who have worked in this country who have committed no crime.
He's being tapped for the Attorney General, not Homeland Security.
But he is a chief law enforcement officer, a man who couldn't qualify as a federal judge.
It's already on the books, though, sir. It's already a law. He's not changing any law. He would just be enforcing a law that's already on the books.
So what you're saying, Eric, is are you telling me now it's okay to round up the 11 million? That's what we should expect from Attorney General, hopefully not Jeff Sessions, that he's going to round up all 11 million undocumented workers, the dreamers,
I have no idea
the ones
what
who
he's
have
planning,
been
but I will tell you, that's the law. If you're here illegally and you get caught, you're supposed to go home.
I think you will find a large support of Republicans who are not in favor of sending 11 million people back across the border when they have committed no crime.
You're speculating.
And that's what Jeff Sessions is going to do.
I got yelled at by O'Reilly earlier for I'm not supposed to do that. You're speculating what Sessions might do.
Well, his word again. Let me be very clear to the viewers. He was against the bipartisan bill of 8, the Gang of 8. He was against it. This man will not compromise. And I'm telling all undocumented workers.
Leo. Who was for it? Who are the Republican senators for it? Marco Rubio, right
now,
Marco Rubio.
Yes, and he lost. And they chased him away from that position.
To Trump. John McCain lost an election, right?
So I'll ask you again. Are you in favor, Eric, of rounding up 11 million people?
No, it has nothing to do with what I'm in favor of. I'm saying the American people elected Donald Trump and they trusted him to pick an attorney general. He has picked someone with some very similar views that he has had on immigration, i.e., Jeff Sessions got funding for a border fence. Do you know that?
As a lawyer, I can read between the lines, and the lines are very simple. Jeff Sessions is a threat to undocumented workers because he will not compromise. And what you refuse to say, Eric, and I understand the position, is that he has said that he's going to round up 11 million people, and he put the #1 guy, his loyal supporter, Jeff Sessions, in charge as the chief law enforcement officer in this country.
I think Donald Trump has said, I think Donald Trump, President-elect Donald Trump, has said that he was interested in deporting the 2 or 3 million illegals here who have committed crimes. He wants to get them out first. I haven't heard him say that he's going to take 11 million people and send them home. I think he will push back against that hard.
Maybe we've been watching the wrong campaign. I'm sure he has said that numerous times.
I'm talking about since he's been elected president. That's what I'm talking about. All right, Leo, I got to leave it right there. Thank you again for joining us. Always good debate with you, sir. And a quick reminder.
Thank you.
Signed copies of Bill's huge bestseller, Killing the Rising Sun, and the new kids book, Give Please a Chance, are available on BillO'Reilly.com. And don't forget, tickets to the Spin Stops Here live show starring Miller, O'Reilly, and Waters. Make great Christmas and Hanukkah gifts. You can get them in Tulsa, Oklahoma, Reading, Pennsylvania, Omaha, Nebraska, Tacoma, Washington, and Westbury, Long Island. Info on BillO'Reilly.com. But next, right here, will this man be the next U.S. ambassador to the United Nations? Rick Grenell joins us just ahead. In the second personal story segment tonight, Rick Grenell served as U.S. spokesman at the United Nations during the George W. Bush administration. Now he's reportedly on President-elect Trump's shortlist to be U.S. ambassador to the UN. Rick joins us now from Palm Springs, California. So, Rick, are you interested in joining the Trump team?
Hey, I'm still excited that we have President-elect Trump. I'm going to do anything that he wants to make him successful. I think change needs to come to Washington. We're all excited about it.
Okay, talk to us a little bit about, I guess that's a yes or no. You're not going to tell us whether or not you've been contacted. Tell us a little about Rand Paul. Senator Rand Paul was on earlier, and he had some issues, and you took issue with something he said about Iran. Tell us about it.
Well, first of all, I think Senator Paul is exactly right. We need to learn the lessons of Iraq. Nation building doesn't work, and I appreciate the fact that he's always reminding us that lesson. It's very good. But on the Iran deal, there have been violations. There's just within the last 10 days, we saw the IAEA tell us that Iran violated the 130-ton limit of heavy water. Heavy water is really important because it moderates reactors. And this specific Iran deal says that if they go over the 130-ton limit, they're supposed to make that available on the international marketplace and sell it. They're not allowed to keep it, except they kept it. So they violated that right away. I think that an administration worried about keeping Iran's feet to the fire would have immediately called a Security Council meeting, would have said this is a violation, asked to be fixed. If they didn't fix it, then you go to the Senate and you ask for sanctions, at least start with U.S. sanctions, maybe roll out banking sanctions right after that. There are things that we can do. Certainly we have to start over. Yeah, it's not an ideal situation.
Those are the sanctions we had, and we lifted those. I want to focus in on Syria policy. We've had, I don't know what we've had. We've had a hodgepodge of Syria policy over the last few years. What is the right answer in Syria? And if Rick Grenell were you an ambassador, what would he recommend to the president?
Well, first of all, the president-elect is going to have to decide what is the U.S. policy going forward. Do we get rid of Assad? The current policy from Obama is that Assad must go. The Russians have stood up to us and said, no, no, no. We don't want Assad to go. And matter of fact, we're going to move military hardware inside Syria to challenge the U.S. policy. So the first question we have to ask ourselves, are we going to continue the Obama policy that Assad should go? Or are we going to find a different way to kind of destroy ISIS, limit what's going on inside Syria, allow Assad to stay? That's a big question.
Very tough. It's a tightrope you have to play, because are you going to step on Russia's toes, or are you going to play ball with Russia? And clearly we have a common enemy foe in here, and is ISIS. But you know, a lot of the money that ISIS is getting can come from someone we're supposed to be siding with.
Yeah, no, there's no question. We've always negotiated with Russia wrong. We have always used arguments, even when I was in the Bush administration, we've used moral arguments to try to persuade the Russians to do something. Moral arguments don't work with the Russians. They think in terms of economic ties. They want to talk about who's going to get the oil, what part are they going to get later. I mean, there's a whole bunch of issues that the Russians respond to, but it's not moral.
Is it a bad idea to work with Russia to eliminate ISIS in Syria and let Assad stay?
It's not a bad idea to work with Russia ever. I think you've first got to decide what's in the best interest of the United States. What is our national security interest? Once you answer that question, then you can work with our allies to try to figure out where the policy goes.
Okay. Very quickly, I only have about a minute or so. We have Hillary Clinton was part of a group that blew up the Libya policy as well. Samantha Power was there as well. What your thoughts on Libya quickly?
Look, it's a mess. I think we gotta work with our allies in the region. We've got to start talking to people in a way that shows that we have strength. We've got to be able to say, look, this is what's going to happen. This is where we want you guys to go. Diplomats at the UN are dying for Americans to have a strategy. It's not just a humanitarian strategy. This is a peace and security strategy. We have to think about national security, not just responding to the latest humanitarian crisis.
All right, Rick, we're going to leave it right there. Thank you very much. All right, a quick footnote. There's a new Contributing Factor podcast on BillO'Reilly.com and iTunes featuring pollsters who correctly predicted Trump's win, both of them. And when we come right back, a showdown is brewing between sanctuary city mayors and Donald Trump. We'll tell you all about that directly ahead. In the Back of the Book segment tonight, sanctuary cities like New York, Los Angeles, and Chicago have been defying federal government law on immigration for years. But the mayors of 3 cities, the largest cities in America, say that a Trump presidency won't change anything and that they will continue to proudly defy ICE on detainer requests for illegal immigrants. Joining us now from Chicago is Steve Cortez, who is a Trump campaign surrogate and a member of his Hispanic Council. And in San Diego, Ruben Navarrete, a nationally syndicated columnist. Ruben, we'll start with you. Why do you think, let me ask you, do you think sanctuary cities should still defy federal law?
Eric, good to be with you again. Here's what I think about sanctuary cities. There's no such thing as a sanctuary city because there's no city in America where an illegal immigrant can go to be safe from being apprehended by a federal law enforcement officer. Just like there's no city in America you can go to avoid paying taxes to the IRS. ICE will find you no matter where you are, no matter what city you're in, including the 3 you mentioned. This is a fraud that's been perpetuated really by liberals and the left to make themselves feel more powerful, as if they somehow call the shots about what goes on in Washington. Well, it's simply not true.
Well, you know, I would push back. I'll let you do it, Steve. Steve, the feds, yeah, Ruben's right. The feds, if they do catch an illegal, they can deport him. But why shouldn't the state and local municipalities, police stations, turn over an illegal that they catch to ICE?
Right, and Eric, for the most part, local police are who do policing, right, at the street level. And the point is, in sanctuary cities like the one I'm in right now, Chicago, where I live, local police are not only not allowed, they are prohibited from informing federal authorities when someone they've arrested, even someone dangerous, is here illegally. And I think this is the height of lunacy. And by the way, my mayor, Rahm Emanuel, he acts very brave when he makes these pronouncements. By the way, he lives under the guard of 24-hour police protection. Who has to actually deal with these sometimes very dangerous people who don't belong here in the first place? It's primarily Latinos. It's people with names like Cortez and Romero. They're the ones who have to deal with dangerous people who are hiding in plain sight who don't belong here in the first place. So this is the height of lunacy, and I'm so happy that Donald Trump has made this one of his linchpin issues that he's going to address as President Trump.
In fact, Ruben, don't local police departments quite often cooperate with the feds on a range of other different types of crime?
Absolutely, and this one too. You can go to any jurisdiction. You will often find in local police departments an ICE agent that's there that works with those patrolmen. Here's how it works. Somebody brings in somebody off the street. ICE takes them off their hands even before they're booked in many cases. Steve talks about Chicago. This is, again, I've been on the show with you before, Steve. You don't understand immigration, and you don't understand what's going on even in Chicago, where under secure communities for 8 years, Barack Obama was able to get people arrested, apprehended in Chicago. And so now all of a sudden Rahm wants to pretend that this has never been happening. Rahm Emanuel is a phony on immigration. He's never been a friend to immigrants or immigration reform, and he's doing it again. He wants to make it seem somehow that
Ruben,
come to Chicago will protect you. He's never protected these people.
You're talking about federal authorities. By the way, they don't deserve to be protected. If you're here illegally in the first place, and on top of that, you're committing a crime, guess what? You don't belong here. You're a danger to the community, and most of all, to minority communities.
Rahm Emanuel, we're talking about what happens in Chicago. What happens in Chicago is, for 8 years under secure communities, those Chicago police officers have not had to check people's immigration status because they simply refer them over to ICE.
Yeah, but,
and they run
Ruben,
that information.
Ruben, isn't that the problem? Is that the sanctuary city and a lot of sanctuary cities said they don't want them doing that. They don't want their police departments turning over illegals that they have caught. Even sometimes when they've been convicted of crime, they don't want them to turned over to ICE.
Eric, they've been saying that for 8 years, and under the table, they've been sending people over. Barack Obama deported nearly 3 million people.
You're saying these mayors are lying to the people that are coming to the camera and saying we're going to let...
Well, because it empowers liberals on the left. They want to believe somehow they have this power, and they don't.
I'll use an example that's very near and dear to this show right here. Kate's Law. Kate Steinle was killed by an illegal who was caught several times, convicted several times, came back and killed Kate Steinle.
Yeah, I think, listen, Eric, here's the important point. We're not talking about knocking on doors and finding a Mexican grandmother who has been here for 30 years and saying, show us your paper. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about dangerous people, and we know that the number is at least in the hundreds of thousands. Donald Trump stipulates it might well be in the millions of people who don't belong here in the first place. On top of that, have committed crimes against Americans, largely, again, against immigrant communities themselves, legal immigrants. So this is utterly unfair. Listen, political correctness is not just dumb, it can sometimes be deadly, and it certainly was for Kate, and it is for many Americans. And it's time for we've turned this world upside down, where we act like people who are illegally are the victims. They are not the victims.
It's a heated debate that will go on. Thank you both very, very much. Sean, thank you. And that's it for us tonight. I'm Eric Bolling, in for Bill O'Reilly, and please remember, the spin stops here because we're looking out for you.